Leonard Funk, the paratrooper who laughed at death. January 29, 1945, Holzheim, Belgium. The snow swirled across the battlefield, cold and unrelenting, the kind of cold that seeps into bones and refuses to leave. First Sergeant Leonard Funk moved cautiously around the corner of a small, battered farmhouse. He had been in combat for years, seen death in the fields of France and the canals of the Netherlands, but nothing in his experience prepared him for the sight that met him here. 90 German soldiers stood before him. Half of them carried rifles, while the other half scrambled to arm themselves from a pile of weapons scattered across the yard. 4 Americans were on their knees in the snow, hands pinned behind their heads, the usual look of captured men frozen in shock. These Germans had been prisoners only 20 minutes ago. Funk's company had captured them in a swift assault on Holzheim, a village that had resisted the Americans stubbornly. 80 Germans were captured by his men, and Funk had assigned only 4 guards to hold them. Now, armed and organized, these soldiers were preparing to strike back. A German officer stepped forward. He shoved the muzzle of an MP-40 submachine gun into Funk's stomach, screaming commands in German. Funk didn't speak a word of it, and neither did any of his men. The officer's face turned red with rage, veins bulging, his shouts echoing through the frigid air. Funk, in the midst of this impossible situation, outnumbered 90-1, did the unthinkable. He began to laugh. The officer's confusion only deepened. Funk laughed louder. The absurdity of the situation, the sheer impossibility of it struck him in a way he could not suppress. For a moment, the world hung suspended in chaos. Then, in a sequence lasting less than a minute, Leonard Funk acted. 21 German soldiers would die, the rest would surrender again, and a former store clerk from Pennsylvania would etch his name into military history. Early life, forged in steel and smoke. Leonard Alfred Funk, Jr. was born on August 27, 1916, in Braddock Township, Pennsylvania. The Monongahela River cut through the town like a scar, lined with steel mills and foundries that belched smoke into the sky. It was a tough place, a place where boys grew fast and learned responsibility early. Funk was no exception. By the time he graduated from high school in 1934, he had already been helping raise his younger brother, taking on the burdens of adulthood long before most of his peers. The Great Depression made life unforgiving. Jobs were scarce, college was a dream for the fortunate few, and survival was the daily task for everyone else. Funk went to work, steady and quiet, forming the habits of discipline and responsibility that would later define him in combat. In June 1941, with the world engulfed in war and the United States still officially neutral but preparing for the inevitable, Congress extended the draft. Funk's number came up. At 24, standing 5'5" and weighing 140 pounds, the Army physical examiner probably assumed he would serve behind a desk, filing reports or sorting supplies. Funk had other plans. He volunteered for the paratroopers, a new, untested branch of the Army. The idea of jumping from airplanes into enemy territory was considered suicidal by most, but Funk embraced it. Paratrooper training at Camp Blanding, Florida, was designed to break the spirit. Weeks of grueling physical exercises, parachute drills, obstacle courses, and relentless endurance tests called half the recruits. Funk endured, earning his wings and being assigned to Company C, 1st Battalion, 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment. By late 1943, he shipped to England, joining the 82nd Airborne Division, veterans of Sicily and Italy, men who had already faced death and seen comrades fall. Funk, at 27, was older than most, but his maturity and steady competence made him a natural leader among younger men barely out of adolescence. Normandy, a leap into chaos. June 6, 1944. The C-477 Skytrain shuddered under anti-aircraft fire as paratroopers lined up for the jump. Funk, fully loaded with 60 pounds of equipment, including a Thompson submachine gun, grenades, ammunition, rations, and medical supplies, stood among them, heart pounding, body tense. The plane was at 400 feet, dangerously low for a jump. German flak cut the night sky, tracers arcing like deadly fireflies. When the green light signaled the jump, Funk dove into the darkness. The wind tore at him, his parachute a fragile lifeline against 1,000 feet of empty air below. France was a patchwork of fields, forests, and enemy positions. Chaos reigned. Men scattered across 50 miles, drowning in flooded fields or landing in German encampments. Funk's landing was brutal, his ankle twisted on impact, possibly fractured, sending waves of pain up his leg. Yet he moved. Alone at first, he collected a small group of lost paratroopers, eventually 18 men, all looking to him for guidance. For 10 days, Funk led them across enemy territory, traveling by night, hiding by day, fighting only when necessary, enduring agony in every step. By June 17th, all 18 had linked up with Allied forces, not one casualty. For this, Funk received the Silver Star and a Bronze Star, as well as his first Purple Heart. Operation Martin Garden, Risk and Precision. September 17, 1944, Holland. Operation Martin Garden, the largest airborne assault in history. 35,000 Allied paratroopers descended into Dutch territory to capture strategic bridges, hoping to end the war by Christmas. Funk's company secured their drop zone, supporting the larger operation. During the mission, Funk noticed a German flak position threatening incoming gliders. 3 20mm anti-aircraft guns were manned and ready to destroy reinforcements, equipment, and supplies. He had only 3 men. Standard doctrine called for a 3-to-1 advantage to assault a fortified position. Funk had the opposite. Still, he led the attack himself. The men stormed the German position, eliminating 20 enemies while sustaining only 3 casualties. For this, Funk earned the Distinguished Service Cross, one of the highest decorations for valor. The Battle of the Bulge, hardened by Normandy. December 16, 1944. The Germans launched a massive offensive in the Ardennes. 3 armies, 1,400 tanks, 1,900 artillery pieces, and 400,000 men sought to split Allied lines and capture Antwerp. American forces were unprepared. Many divisions collapsed under pressure. On December 17th, near the Bogness Crossroads, members of the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion encountered SS troops. Disarmed, captured, and lined up in the snow, 84 Americans were executed in what became known as the Normandy Massacre. Funk, already hardened by years of combat, vowed he would never surrender to the Germans. This decision would define his actions weeks later. Holzheim, laughter in the face of death. January 29, 1945. Company C was tasked with capturing Holzheim. Funk, now acting executing officer, found his company under strength and exhausted. He assembled a group of clerks, supply personnel, and cooks, men who had never fired a shot in combat, and led them through 15 miles of snow and artillery fire. By the time they reached Holzheim, Funk had transformed these civilians into soldiers. The assault on the village captured 80 German prisoners. Funk assigned 4 guards, believing the threat contained. But as Funk cleared the village, a German patrol liberated the prisoners, arming them and preparing a counterattack. Funk returned, unaware of the danger, and encountered 90 armed Germans. With 4 men disarmed beside him and a submachine gun pressed into his stomach, Funk faced certain death. Instead of surrendering, he laughed. Perhaps it was stress, perhaps a tactic, perhaps the sheer absurdity of the situation, the sheer impossibility of it struck him in a way he could not suppress. For a moment, the world hung suspended in chaos. Then, in a sequence lasting less than a minute, Leonard Funk acted. 21 German soldiers would die, the rest would surrender again, and a former store clerk from Pennsylvania would etch his name into military history. Recognition and legacy. For his actions, Funk received the Medal of Honor, presented by President Harry Truman on September 5, 1945. His other decorations included the Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Bronze Star, and 3 Purple Hearts. International honors included the Croix de Guerre from France,